Hi, I'm Bill, the domestic monk. So it's been a long time since I made a video on this channel. So much has happened over the last 18 months or so, it's crazy. But the biggest thing that's happened recently, hear that cow over there. The biggest thing that happened recently, my wife and I just sold our house in California. I've lived in California since 1984. Met my wife there, raised 4 kids there, had a great career there. But we decided it was time to sell and move on and look for the next chapter of our lives. And one of the things great about being a Catholic is that no matter where you go, the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church. And one of the things I always did with my kids when they were growing up, much to their chagrin probably, no matter where we went, we would vacation back east a lot. I grew up in Massachusetts, and we'd go to Maine and back to Massachusetts, and wherever we went on vacation, Big Bear, California, you name it. If there was a Sunday, we went to church. And I just wanted to teach kids that no matter where you go, the church is the church, and you always have a home. And so we're out on the road looking for the next chapter in our lives, and it's it's bittersweet. I mean, I spent a long time in California. It's been a great state for me, and I've spent the last 34 or so years at St. Killian Catholic Church in Mission Viejo, California, and it's been a great parish for me. I mean, I've only been in 2 parishes my whole life. I was raised in North Brookfield, Massachusetts. I went to St. Joseph Parish there. I was an altar boy. I got my first communion, my confirmation there, and then when I got out of the Army and moved to California, my brother was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and after I got out of the Sheriff's Academy, we bought a house in Mission Viejo, and he comes home one day and he says, I found the best church. It's, you're in and out in 30 minutes, and there's no singing and no holding hands, and we've been there ever since. And for the first 20 years or so, Father Jim Dunning was the pastor there, and he was great. And for the last several years, maybe 6 or so, we've had Father Angelo Sebastian and Father Tuan as the assistant pastor, and they've been great. It's a great parish, and I've been so lucky to be there. But while we're on this journey, every Sunday, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is attending Mass in another church as we go across the country. And this trip is not just a vacation trip for us or to find the next place, but it's also a bit of a pilgrimage. There are some specific things we want to do on this trip. One of them is visit the Loretto Staircase in Santa Fe, New Mexico, or the St. Joseph Staircase, they call it. You'll notice the St. Joseph theme here. My first parish was St. Joseph's in North Brookfield, Massachusetts. St. Joseph is my patron saint. I do have a devotion to him, and I really want to visit that. Also, the National Shrine to St. Joseph is in Wisconsin, and we've got some friends up there that we're going to visit, so we're going to see that. And of course, we have to stop by Our Lady of Good Help, which is the site of the only Vatican-approved Marian apparition in the United States. So these are some of the things we're going to do. But I thought while I'm gallivanting across the country and checking out these different churches, maybe I could tell a little bit about my experience and hopefully encourage people to attend Mass at these different places when they're on the road. So last weekend, September 12th, we attended San Francisco de Asis Catholic Church in Flagstaff, Arizona. And so my impressions of the church initially, it was pretty impressive. So I mentioned St. Joseph's Church, or that we attended church in Big Bear when the kids were little. And Big Bear, for those who are unaware of it, is it's kind of a mountain town, vacation resort town in Southern California up in the San Bernardino Mountains. So we had a cabin up there for a few years, and while the kids were teenagers, and we went to church there every Sunday. And it was St. Joseph's Church too, go figure. And it was a beautiful setting, just up there in the mountains in the pine trees, and they had these beautiful stained glass windows behind the altar where you could see trees and kind of the blue sky and the white clouds. And San Francisco de Asis Catholic Church in Flagstaff is similar to that. So it's off the main drag. You go down the main road through Flagstaff, and on the corners there's a Starbucks, and there's a sign right on the corner, San Francisco de Asis, and it points up the hill. And it is a hill. I mean, we had to truck up that thing in our motorhome, and as you're getting up the top of that hill, it opens up, and they're on the top of this hill, and it's the beautiful Flagstaff scenery in the background, just pine trees and hills, and beautiful up there. And the church is on one side, and the school is on another. And it's a pretty modern church. It can't have been around there that long. And they have an active school there. And so my impressions when you walk in, it's a modern type church. Some might call it in the round. It's not necessarily in the round. When you walk in the front of the church, it's a straight section in the center, but off on either sides of the altar is another, pretty substantial seating section. So it kind of gives you that round feeling. And it's not, I grew up in the East Coast, and I've always favored the straight, churches where everybody's facing forward. But it is what we have here for churches in America mostly now, particularly in the West. And it was beautiful inside, I have to tell you that. A couple things I liked. So all around the exterior of the church, like most churches, they had the Stations of the Cross. But in between those, they had these big, probably 8 by 8 foot murals depicting significant moments in the life of St. Francis. And they were pretty impressive to look at as you went around. The altar was in the center. Another thing I liked, the tabernacle was right there up behind the altar where I think it should be. I mean, I've been in some chapels, some churches where they have an adoration chapel and the Blessed Sacrament is set off on its own. And those are nice too. They can be pretty intimate, but I still believe that Jesus Christ himself, his body and blood is in that tabernacle, and I just think it should be prominently centered in the church, and it was here. It was a pretty well-attended service, and, post-COVID, they did have a recommendation to wear masks, but most people weren't. We didn't when we went in, and it was probably, I want to say, a little over half full when you consider how many people you could fill in it, but there were a lot of people in the mass, and all ages. They had some older folks, some younger folks, a lot of kids, families. So it was really neat to see that. The style of Mass was Novus Ordo. I know this is big debate in the church right now, or traditional Mass, for the Latin Mass versus the Novus Ordo. Personally, I was raised post-Vatican II. I was born in 1962, and that's when Vatican II happened, and for me, everything has been Novus Ordo. Now, when I was a kid, my dad used to take us, I grew up in central Massachusetts, and the Spencer Abbey, I forget the name of those monks over there, the Trappists, had an abbey in Spencer, which was nearby. And my dad used to take us to Christmas Mass over there, Christmas Eve Mass, and it was amazing. They had this stone chapel. The entire Mass was sung in Gregorian chant. It was beautiful. And I love that Latin Mass. But, for me, I was born and raised into the Novus Ordo Mass. That's what I know. And I know that in some cases it can be done poorly, and where there are abuses, they should be cleaned up. But, the Mass is the Mass. And if the sacraments are good and that's where we get our graces, then, either one is good for me. So it was a Novus Ordo style Mass. It was presided over by 2 priests. Wasn't a deacon because both of them had double stoli. The music, if I had to pick one thing that I wasn't really a big fan of, it was the music. Now for me, I just talked about the Novus Ordo Mass versus the traditional Latin Mass, but I think the Mass needs to be formal, and the music here was guitar and kind of folksy music. It wasn't horrible, but it's just not my thing. I mean, I grew up with an organ and usually one cantor, and at the Mass I typically went to in St. Kilian, we had the same thing. Now at St. Kilian, they mix it up. I mean, they had a family Mass with, guitar music and more variety of instruments. But I kind of went to the earlier Mass where we typically had a cantor. She sang amazingly, and usually the organ or the piano or backing them up. But it wasn't horrible. It didn't take away from the Mass. Just wasn't my bag. The homily was great. So what was interesting, he focused on the second reading last week, which was from the second letter of James. where we talked about that good old debate between Protestants and Catholics going back to Martin Luther, right, which was faith versus works. And I thought he did a great job. I mean, basically, he challenged us as Catholics to live the gospel. And the sum and substance of his homily was he challenged everyone to do a daily examination of conscience, reflect on their day, and see if they're actually living the gospel, which was what we're called to do. So I thought it was a great sermon, and it was delivered well. The time, hour on the dot. I mean, I looked down when they were wrapping up, and it was a 10 o'clock mass, and I think it was 10:58. And then at the end of the mass, they said the Hail Mary and the St. Michael's Prayer. So in California, or at least in the Diocese of Orange, we always say the St. Michael's Prayer at the end of mass. But here they did the Hail Mary and the St. Michael's Prayer, and I liked that. I thought it was good. So my impressions, man, what a great service. I mean, it seems like a vibrant parish. It was beautiful inside. The church was nice. People were friendly. I would say if you're in the Flagstaff area on a Sunday or a Saturday, or even for daily mass, if you're looking for a place to drop in, San Francisco de Asis Catholic Church in Flagstaff is a good place to hit. So until next time, as always, Paseo et on.